You're listening to the Blue Raider Podcast, your number one resource for all the latest news, updates, and game recaps from Middle Tennessee athletics. Join us every Tuesday for our weekly interviews with players, coaches, and local media personalities alike. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to like and subscribe on all our socials. We're on Instagram, X, Twitter, and TikTok at Blue Raider Pod. If you're currently listening on your favorite streaming service, we also offer a visual presentation on YouTube at Blue Raider Podcast. Lastly, I'd love to hear your feedback, so don't forget to subscribe to GoMiddle.com to discuss this week's episodes along with the latest news and updates around Middle Tennessee. Welcome into the Blue Raider Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Bolden, and today is Tuesday, April 16th, and we are wrapping up the blue and white game over the weekend, and with me is a friend of mine and co-worker over at GoMiddle.com, and I bring him in for his expertise on all things coaching side for MTSU football. It's Austin Lewis. Austin, how's it going?
Man, it's going well. How are you doing today?
Not too bad myself. We had an eventful weekend in Murfreesboro. I know, unfortunately, you weren't able to be there for the showcase that they had where we had all the sports going on. We had softball, tennis, baseball, soccer, and then, of course, the blue and white game that we'll get to talk about today. And I think there's a lot to be excited about that happened this past weekend.
Yeah, if you're an MTSU fan, the spring practice season, if I can use that term, went about as good as you can imagine. The team got out healthy. There wasn't a significant injury that was reported. It looks like the offense got installed, the defense got installed. If you're a coach, if you're a fan, if you're a player, the spring practice went about as good as you can imagine. Best case scenario for Blue Raider Nation.
Absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head there with the fact that we got out healthy, and that was one thing that Mason said at the start of his press conference was he's happy that we all got healthy, and you also said too, like Blue Raider Nation won. I think it was a great spring, and as someone that's kind of been, I guess, in the dark as far as what would change or how would this team look, because we see a lot of the guys, a lot of our better players from last year, especially on the defensive side, hit the portal. We have to pick up a lot of bodies in the portal, and so you're interested to see how things turn out. And from what we saw on Saturday, I feel really good about it. And I mean, we can get through all the X's and O's and the personnels here, but really just the fact that the defense didn't look completely lost. That was my biggest fear. We still look, I would say, we're a little undersized, but when you compare the defensive line relative to the offensive line, they're going to look a little small. But they were able to get after all the quarterbacks. They did a good job of mixing up the personnel from both offense and defense. I think Mason did a great job of challenging his guys, but still made it a competitive game. Obviously, they had a little bit on the line with the steak dinner, but it's all in good fun. And I think again, I had a lot. I think there's a lot to be excited about. And really, as far as what you're looking at, what are some takeaways from the spring game?
So for me as a fan / coach / guy who loves just the game of football, the big thing I'm taking away and the big thing that Middle Tennessee fans need to take away is the offense got installed. The defense got installed. Mason got to see what he has as head coach of the Blue Raiders. You really can't tell all the ins and outs of your roster until you see him on the field with some pads hitting each other. And you got to see that with spring practice. You got to install the offense. And now the coaches can get back together and go, you know what? We need offensive line or we need defensive line. We'll probably talk about that in more detail here in a second. Or we're really good at running outside zone, or we're really good at running an inside zone. We're really good at screens, or we're really good at drop back passes. You get to see that, and that allows you as you go into fall camp to start game planning your season and start putting together how you're going to attack opponents come fall camp, and even maybe work on a couple of things, fine tune a couple of things to make sure you're a well-rounded competitive team when the fall comes here in just a few months.
Right, and I think one of the big question marks we had for Mason when we spoke to him was about the quarterback situation. We thought Vadiato might be in for a little bit of a battle with Luther Richardson, and now we have Roman Gagliano that's kind of made an appearance. He got first reps there on the white team's first drive, which impressed me as a freshman. He looked a little hesitant in there. I think one thing about him is he has the tools, he has the size to be a good Division I quarterback, but he just doesn't have the experience. So in today's game, he's going to have 5 years to kind of fine-tune those things, and he's only a year behind Richardson. But Richardson, as we have spoken about ad nauseum about the guy is he definitely has the tools. He has the vertical threat that you're looking for a Division I quarterback. But then ultimately, going back to Vadiato, I mean, the guy went 15 to 16 over 200 yards in the spring game for a guy that didn't play every single drive. Those are masterful numbers. And if you look at two of the roster, I won't get too in detail, but Mason put the better secondary on the white defense. So he had to face a better secondary on purpose. And again, I think Mason obviously has his ways of making that happen. So, but I was impressed with him. One thing I love too about Bodie Reeder's offense is, or at least relative to what we've had in years past, is it is a much more of a vertical threat than what we see of a lateral threat. Not that that's a problem, but we've gotten away from the air raid. We actually went under center a few times. We utilize 12 personnel. The tight ends are going to be such a huge threat this year, which is why when you see Holden Willis there listed as a tight end over from a wide receiver. But there were times where Willis was outside the numbers. So it's not like he's going to be used strictly in a tight end or a slot receiver situation. He put him outside the numbers. So I don't know if that's necessarily him, playing around with Willis as a flex receiver, tight end type. But the fact is we're still, I feel great. Like I feel like there's something new we're going to see at Floyd Stadium this year. And again, I think Vadiato is kind of the clear cut number one. And we saw that as evidence on Saturday.
I think the fact that Nick sees this opportunity not to just compete for the QB1 spot, but sees control that is his spot, that if he is healthy this fall, it's his spot, is the best case scenario. There's an old saying among football coaches that if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And now going into fall camp, Mason knows he has Nick. Brody knows he has Nick. Nick commanded the offense in a superb way, 15 of 16, 200 plus yards in splitting time. Those are phenomenal numbers. And so that's a reason for hope for Blue Raider fans as they start to look ahead to the fall season. But you would talk about the backup quarterbacks and Roman being a little hesitant. That's to be expected. He's a true freshman. 4 months ago, he was sitting in a high school chemistry class trying to break down chemical equations or whatever you do in high school chemistry that I slept through. Now he's breaking down Division I defenses. And that's a step. And that's going to help him not only this fall if he has to play, but next fall and the fall after that, because he has 2 or 3 years in the system. And he's going to be a better quarterback because of his experience this fall. And so everything you saw on the offensive side is so promising. Even Holden Willis, you pointed him out. That's the tight end position now. The tight end 20 years ago was an inline guy right next to the offensive tackle, and you were going to run him on a route here and there unless you were Frank Wycheck or Shannon Sharp. But if you watch the Kansas City Chiefs today, you watch some of the top tight ends in the NFL today, they're split out wide just as much sometimes as they are attached to the offensive line. And so it's going to be really fun this fall to see how Holden Willis is used. And because you could see a situation where Holden Willis is split out wide, but another tight end is tight. And so how do defenses play that? And how does Brody use that come this fall? It's going to be a really interesting storyline to watch.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, him and they call him TK, Taharon Sudirth. He was impressive. He got a lone touchdown for the white team. Slade Alexander was another young guy that got quality minutes there. So with the type of threats that the tight ends are, I think it's obvious in the personnel type that he's choosing. Not only do they need to be blockers, but they also need to have great hands. And he's got a good grouping of tight ends that have just that. It also makes you excited about upcoming tight end signees that we know about, but with this crew in general, there's a lot to be excited about. But outside of those pass catchers, I was really, really impressed with Amari Kelly. He had 5 catches for over 100 yards, and he's the transfer in from Auburn. And he's fortunate enough to come into the press conference afterwards. And, I kind of asked him a question about him having a chip on his shoulder and him making a name for himself here. And he seems happy about where he is. He's happy that Mason has kind of utilized him. And seeing him play, he has a body type that is just reminiscent of an NFL like. I'm not going to say that he's going to be getting on the draft boards, but he very well could put those numbers up given this offense that's very vertical. He has great body control, great sideline awareness. We saw 2 great catches over the spring game. Again, I understand I don't want to make a mountain out of a mole here, but it is the spring game. But he just has that playmaker ability in him that
Yeah.
it shows a lot of promise, and I'm really excited about him. And there's a few other guys that kind of caught my eye, but and really it's the running back position, which is something that never has been highlighted for MTSU in years past with the air raid. We saw 5-6 guys get a good number of carries. We see some local guys who put up some good numbers over the spring game. So, but I really want to bring up Omari Kelly just because if you don't know, you didn't see the game. He's a guy that's going to come up a lot this fall,
Yeah.
given he stays healthy.
There was so much to like about Kelly's film when he was signed. He was a guy that you see and you watch, and it's like hot dog. This guy's an athlete, and when he gets in space, he's gonna make some things happen, especially in Conference USA. And you saw in spring practice. I mean, he got highlighted there. I lost count. It seems like the number of times the football account posted film of something Kelly was doing in practice, and so I'm really excited to see what he can do this season. He's a guy that I'm highlighting. For me, one of the interesting things that I saw is Josh Evans, a true freshman, 6'3", about 215 or so. He was listed as one of the starting receivers on the Blue offense. I am super excited to see what he does this season. Do they redshirt him? Do they not? With Jamarian Carter and Amari Kelly being both kind of 6'1", 6'2", 180, 190-pound guys, Josh Evans at 6'3", 215 or so adds a different element, a physical element. And so if I can make some pro comps to some of these guys, what you see in Omari Kelly is kind of like a Malik Neighbors, a really good, well-rounded guy. But what I see in Josh Evans is more like that Roman Aduzzi guy for Washington, who is just a physical specimen, really physical at the point of attack as a receiver. And so I think you see a diversity of types of receivers that Brody can use to attack the opposing defense. Gone are the days where it seemed like the receivers were all hobbits going out for passes. This is a vertical offense, as you said before, and the receivers are designed to play in a vertical offense. And so I can't wait to see what that offense looks like this fall.
Right. And another name I want to add to that list, and he's probably not much on anyone's radar, is Cameron Lacey. He's the redshirt freshman from Toccoa Falls, Georgia. He had 3 catches. If you look at the stats, he had 3 catches for 54 yards, which is still pretty good numbers as far as yards per catch. But just one thing about him that just stood out to me is, I had more of an aerial view being up in the press boxes. He's very slippery. He's only 5'8", 160 pounds. He reminds me a lot of Richie James, which we all know how his career panned out. So he's a guy that, and again, when I'm interviewing Omari Kelly, he's a guy that he also threw his name in that hat of saying guys that have improved significantly over the spring. So I don't know how much PT, as the wide receiving room is very veteran led. We've got a lot of guys there that are going to get a lot of PT, but a guy like Cameron Lacey, I look forward to his progression, because again, I saw a lot to like from him in the spring game. And I know that there was a situation too, like I said, he has 3 catches, 54 yards, but there was a situation where I know we were at the 50 some odd yard. He snuck his way through. I think he was down to the 20 wide open, and then Gagliano got sacked, or he was scrambling and wasn't able to find him. But it's a situation where if you have a more experienced quarterback, that's probably a 30-yard pop, if not a touchdown. So he's a guy that, again, I was really impressed with his skill type, his speed. Again, he's a little undersized, but, I mean, in Conference USA, being 5'8" doesn't necessarily do you any harm. Maybe for NFL boards, but that's not what we're worried about. We're worried about winning Conference USA games. So really, really happy with that. And then, we're talking all this offense and not giving much credit to the defense, because for the most part, you were still able to hold Vadiota to 20 points, despite throwing for 200 yards and only playing really about 2 quarters worth of football. So the defensive side, a lot of transfers, a lot of veterans there that they've added to the secondary. I still have my my concerns about the defensive side of the ball, because we saw so many bodies leave. But we have a lot of experience there. I was really impressed with James Mon there at the Indiana transfer at the nickel position. He's always seems to find his way there into the mix as far as making tackles and those kind of things. And you got Ricky Smith, who's the Purdue transfer there at free safety. There's a lot of skill And then Chris Johnson, Riverdale guy, local guy, that got an interception there on an overthrown pass. So it's just a situation of right place, right time for him. So you've got these guys who have been around the program or those that are new to the program. And the one thing that always concerns me is what's the chemistry like? I think you have the added benefit of having a new coach. So it's not like there's any sort of you can understand this. There's not any sort of new wordplay. There's not any sort of new playbook language these guys have to learn because it's new for everybody at this point. You got a brand new coach. So with those guys, I saw a lot to like. They're buzzing around. They're making plays. They're making tackles. And maybe it's a product of going up against guys like Omari Kelly and Gamarian Carter against Vadiata that makes it so challenging for them. But there's still room for improvement there. And I don't know if that's something that they look to address in this upcoming phase 3 as Mason calls it for the transfer portal. But I still feel good about it, but if you give them another summer and a fall to kind of find their place in this defense, they could certainly be really good for us in the fall.
Yeah, I think you'll see, as you said, phase 3. They're going to attack defensive line. They're going to attack linebacker. They're going to attack the secondary. Try to shore up that defense because there's some room for improvement from a personnel standpoint. It's great to hear that James Mon stood out at nickel. You want to see your nickel guy be a little feisty because he's going to have to come up sometimes and play run support, but he also has to be good enough to drop back in coverage. And so they're going to have to shore up because so much of the defense, in my opinion, honestly relies on those front 4 guys, those front 3 or 4 guys. And if those guys aren't getting pressure, and they got to the quarterback some, but if they can't consistently get to quarterbacks with 3 or 4 guys, you're going to have to start blitzing. And when you start blitzing, that means you're leaving your corners out on islands. And that creates problems. And so the better off your front 4, your front 5 can be, your front 7, as some people call it, the better off your defense will be. And I really expect Mason will address or seek to address the front 4 to 7 in the phase 3, the transfer portal, as they get a better clarity of what they have defensively and how guys fit in to their defense. Mason's running more of a 3-down lineman base defense. Schaefer was more of a 4-down lineman. And you're trying to see, does that undersized defensive end and Schaefer's system fit as an outside backer, rush edge in Mason's system? And so now they have a better idea how guys fit within their specific system, what guys like Felix Hickson can do there in the nose, and how guys are working together and layer that defense together. And so they can attack the portal. And I think they will. I think they're going to hit the portal hard to try to find a couple of guys to take that defense from good to great this year. Great being what they need to be to get to bowl eligibility, to compete for a conference championship, if that's their goal this year.
Yeah, he did say afterwards that they're looking to get better up front, and I don't know that he's necessarily looking to find someone immediately that's gonna start for him. But he emphasized the depth. He really wants the depth, and so the way he put it was everyone has their ones, everyone has their starters, but really it's what does that 2 and 3 do? Because especially when you're talking about defensive rotations, your 3-down linemen aren't going to play, a whole 12-play drive. So what are those other guys going to be able to do for him? So I do expect us to get some news and some signings there at both sides of the trenches. I know that he's still trying to find. We had a player today that entered the portal from the offensive line who had 16 starts for us, I believe, in his career. But he feels good about the offensive line, but he wants to add depth there. And the defensive line, as you already said, is just something that he wants to strengthen with that. And really the linebacker position as well. So I don't know where his head's at as far as finding a guys. And he'll always talk about finding guys that are blue collar, guys that are looking to come to work every day and bring their lunch pail. And I think that's a great attitude to have. But as far as the intangibles, like, is he looking for guys that are 6'1" plus, or are those guys even in the portal that are coming to MTSU? I don't know. But I would expect to see some shakeup there at the defensive line. We had a good bright spot there. As far James Stewart was a defensive end who had 3 sacks on record. I always get a little nitpicky on the sacks when it comes to spring game when it's touch, because you can't always credit those, but it does show that he's able to get pressure, and that's a good thing. The offensive lines were mixed up pretty good for the most part. I couldn't tell you who his starting 5 is going to be, and I think that he probably couldn't tell you concrete either, given his comments about wanting to get better up front. So there's still a lot to be learned about what he wants to do in the trenches. But if I had to put my money where my mouth is, I would be willing to bet that he's looking for bigger size. He's looking for a little bit more speed, especially at the outside linebacker position, because, as you say, he's looking for more of a 4 linebacker set where he's willing to throw, he's willing to cover the low game as far as passing goes. He's not willing to put too much pressure, but he does need someone that can cause some sort of pass rush, because we saw remnants of that on Saturday. But is it enough? I don't know. I don't have that kind of good of an eye for football to tell you that I feel great about our defensive line. But if we can create a pass rush, you'd feel a lot better about the experience that we have in our secondary.
Yeah, when it comes to personnel, it was very clear back in signing day, whether it's December or February, Mason prioritizes size and power. Like, if you were to compare side by side the last couple of signing classes under Coach Doc, and then a couple of signing classes, the February and December signing class under Mason, by and large, the players that Mason signed were bigger, both height wise and weight wise, than their comparable peers that Stock signed. And so I 100% expect Mason to prioritize getting a couple of guys who are just a bit bigger. I don't see him wanting to go into the season with a defensive end or an edge that's undersized. He wants to get that speed, that power on the field as quickly as possible, because in a 3-down line set, you don't want to be undersized. You got to have guys who are a little bit bigger than your 4-down line sets, generally speaking. And so size is going to be important. Power is going to be important. That's why you're seeing guys like Felix Dixon is going to be a starter this year or play significant reps for Middle Tennessee, because at 6'3", 320, he's a guy you put at nose tackle and he's going to plug the A gap. He's going to be a space eater. It's just a matter of, what do you do at the end position? What do you do at the Russ edge position? And I don't see Mason wanting to go into the season in an ideal world with a edge rusher that's 230, 6'2", 230. He may have to. That may be what he has to play with this year. I see him wanting to get to 6'3", 240, 6'3", 245, or 250. He's going to want to head that direction as fast as possible, because he knows he needs those type of players, those type of bodies to run his system effectively.
Right, absolutely, yeah, and we'll hopefully. I know the portal opens for 2 weeks, and we'll see some names that potentially pop up. They do a pretty good job as far as football goes, is hearing who has interest where, and so those names will hopefully come to us quickly. But I'll shift gears back to the offensive side. We're talking about the trenches, and one thing that I was impressed with was I think the run game this year it'll be a lot different. I couldn't tell you the last time MTSU rushed for over 100 yards from the running back position. I know that we've had quarterbacks that scramble pretty well, Vadiato being one of them, and his help can typically get us over 100 yards a game, but it's never been something that has been a part of our game for years. But one thing that stood out to me, again, as I was saying earlier, was the depth that we have at the running back position. You have Frank Peasant, you got Flip Krettel. Those guys were excellent. As far as those that we saw at the spring game, we have Raymond Banner, who's a guy from Laverne, and then we also had Jace Gardner, both of which were on the blue team. So if you're keeping up at home, for those housekeeping notes, you had on the blue team, you had Vadiato, who threw for over 200 yards, and then you have backups, Raymond Banner and Jace Gardner, guys who aren't even listed as 1-2 on the depth chart. They roll out almost 90 yards of offense from the backfield. So that's promising. And I'll give credit to Banner and Gardner for being able to get the yards when they got those opportunities. But also, too, most of our 1s and 2 running backs, which is Flip and Frank Peasant, when we limited their carries probably on purpose to limit the likelihood of injury. But if you throw those guys into that position, they probably also get 70, 80 yards.
Yeah.
So that's promising, because now you have made it, as we keep saying, you made your offense a lot more versatile. If you have a vertical passing threat, it opens up the run game. When you're more lateral, like we've seen in years past, it kind of neutralizes that threat, because they're going to load the box, and obviously you're not going to have any sort of outside run game at all. So I feel really good about the running game. As far as the running back room, I saw a lot in the depth pieces, and if those guys are able to perform, you feel really good about what you got there at your 1 and 2 with Peasant and Krettel.
I think with the offense they're trying to run, having a good running game, a solid running game that you can trust to get good yards, 4, 5, 6 yards when you need it, and then break off that explosive run. One or two of those longer runs a game is going to be so helpful for this offense because once you establish that run threat, that play action opens up. And then you can do that play action to um, uh, Frank and then run that crosser behind the linebackers as they've creeped up, and you've got 15 yards every time. And to your point, they've struggled running the ball the last couple of years. And to see them have success in the spring game, in the first spring game in the Mason era, is a promising start to what could be a transitional time period and for Middle Tennessee football. To see backups have success when starters struggled in past years is a bright spot this spring. And so the key for Mason is on the offensive side, you got to make sure your offensive line can block. What are your top five? Can they run your run schemes? And then, finding those running backs and knowing how to use those running backs within your scheme to maximize the effectiveness of your rushing attack. And that's going to be key this season to get guys like Frank and Cradle the opportunity, give them a hole to run. The last couple of years, they haven't had holes. And you even saw a comment this year in spring practice from one of the running backs. Like this year was the first time they were actually taught about how to read the openings and when to cut it back and when not to. And so that's a reason for optimism that the running backs are learning how to read the holes and read the leverage of the defense and read the leverage of the offensive line to better attack the defense and to find that explosive play, which again is going to help the offense in general.
Absolutely, yeah. There's so much to be excited about, and I say that to bring up our next point is our expectations. I know this is your third time talking MTSU football since the Derek Mason era has begun. When we first had our discussion, I don't know if you ever put a number to it, but I said we'd be great at 5 wins the first year. 6 would be incredible. And I after watching the spring game again, I know I keep saying I'm not going to make a big deal out of this, but I feel really good. I really do. And if you told me that we could win 6 games, I'd probably believe you now after watching what I saw on Saturday. The biggest thing is how healthy are we going to be when we get to Tennessee Tech? And then how healthy are we going to be when we come out of that 3-game non-conference gauntlet? When we play Memphis, we play Duke. So, like, how are we able to get into conference play? And, of course, you got to be able to steal 5 conference games. I say steal. You got to be able to win 5 conference games on top of Tennessee Tech games. So, right now, as I sit in the middle of April, I feel pretty good about it. I would say 6 is realistic now. I don't want to put too much on Derek Mason's plate. Not that I think he's waiting on the Blue Raider podcast to hold his feet to any sort of fire, but I will say that I expect 6, and I feel pretty good. I feel like there's a good opportunity for that to happen.
Yeah, I think in the past I've said somewhere around 5 wins, and that's less a criticism of Mason and more of a criticism or concern about the schedule. I mean, when you're playing Ole Miss is going to be a top 10, top 15 program this year. And so anytime you have one of those program on your schedule, it's oh boy, especially one that is going to have a well coached offense with Lane Kiffin. You kind of know that game has a better chance of getting into a 45-10 than it does to be a 28-24. Duke is breaking in a new head coach, just like Middle Tennessee. So there's a little uncertainty with Duke, with how they're going to look and what they're going to look like. And then with Memphis, they're a good G5 program. They've had some success in recent years. And so where does Middle Tennessee stack up? And so my concern getting to magical 6 wins is more out of conference than in conference. I think Middle Tennessee will stack up well against FIU and New Mexico State and Kennesaw State and Louisiana Tech. I think they're going to be okay and they're going to stack up well. It's the out of conference that I'd be worried about. And then on top of that, you got to find a way to steal a game from Western or Liberty. Right. Western and Liberty have beat the tar out of Middle Tennessee for the last several years. And to be honest, Middle Tennessee fans are tired of it. They want to steal one of those games, and can you do it? Both of those teams, Western and Liberty, are well-coached teams. Those are going to be difficult games. And so you've got to find a way to make sure you start off the year with a win against Tennessee Tech, who's also breaking in a new head coach. You've got to battle through some adversity with Ole Miss and then go through a 3-game stretch of Western, Duke, and Memphis before you get into the brunt of your conference schedule. And that 3-game stretch, can they go, let's say, 1-2 between Western, Duke, and Memphis? Can they get to, let's say, 2-3 before they get to the brunt of their college schedule, the conference schedule? And if they can, I think there's a chance Middle Tennessee could go bowling in year one of the Derek Mason era. But they've got to stay healthy, and they need some balls to bounce their way, and need Memphis or Duke to kind of take a day off.
Yeah, I
and
don't
on a
disagree.
conference schedule.
Right. No, I think that's perfect, because that's kind of how I look at it too. And I forget about that Western game getting thrown up there at the top. Shame on Conference USA for making that happen. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That 3-game stretch would be vital to, I guess, the outlook on the season, right? Because I mean, if you're able to, as you say, pick up just one, it could be anyone, and thankfully for MTSU, you got Western and Duke both at home. So if you can just get one of those, and I don't know that Memphis is pretty tough to beat down there at the Liberty Bowl, but stranger things have happened, and MTSU, years before Memphis became the G5 power that they are, they had pretty good success down there. So anything could really happen there. But if you could steal one of that 3-game set, you got to assume Tennessee Tech, and you got a pretty good easy start to Conference USA for the most part. I mean, you're going to have a week and a half break before that Louisiana Tech, and then you've got that really weird Conference USA scheduling where you go Thursday to a Tuesday, 5 days is ridiculous. But again, you have the benefit of that Kennesaw State game being at home. So, that's a great synopsis of what's at hand for Derek Mason as far as what they need to do. Because if you can come out of non-conference, well, plus the WKU game, if you can come out of non-conference at 2-3, I would say you're going to get 4 out of those last handful of games. So, that's where I feel we're at right now. 5-6 wins. You still feel confident in that?
I think that's the most likely scenario. I mean, there's always the chance you get to fall camp and someone blows a knee out. You get to week 1 or week 2, and the worst case scenario, and you're looking at a team that's injury riddled, and you're just get us through the season. Those situations happen. I'm a Titans fan, and I saw that happen to the Titans a couple of years ago. That just happens. That's football. But in a normal year where most of your players stay healthy, and you get a couple of good solid pickups in the portal in phase 3, I think there's chance. There's potential to get 5-6 wins this year. Try to get to bowl eligibility. That's the game. And the reason why bowl eligibility is so important, I know we Middle Tennessee fans, even myself, kind of picked on Coach Stock a lot for just boasting in bowl eligibility. But the key for bowl eligibility for Derek Mason is momentum. Because he tells his recruits, look, year 1, we went to a bowling. On top of that, going bowling gives him another week or 2 to practice, which is another week or 2 to give reps to younger players, which aids the development for 2025 and 2026. Depending on which bowl, you could almost get another 15 practices. Not quite, but you're looking somewhere between 10 and 15 practices, depending on the bowl. That's almost another spring practice of reps for the young players, which is going to help the future of the program as Mason seeks to build on the foundation that Stock left him, build on the foundation of 2024, his first season, and take the program into 2025 and 2026. That's the key. Building momentum, building on that foundation.
Right. Yeah. No, that's perfect. That's a great analysis on the situation. And I mean, I would assume that's his goal. 6 wins is just to get there. And as you say, all coaches kind of allude to the fact of getting those 2 to 3 extra weeks of practice. And then not only that, in our special case at MTSU, we go to Hawaii or we go to Bahamas. That's always a great selling tool to kids to say, if you come here, you're going to get a tropical vacation at Christmas.
Yeah.
So, we'll shift our gears now over to women's basketball. I know that we had a lot of exciting news this last week. We had the signing of Macy Pfeiffer, and then we had Carson Swaney a couple weeks ago. But then as we're recording this afternoon on a Monday, we just got the news of Alina Arike from Texas Tech is now transferring to the Lady Raiders. And to set the stage for you as far as her, she's from UTEP 2 years prior, where she was Defensive Player of the Year. She gave us a lot of problems. She was a good scorer. It was 12 points a game, 5.5 rebounds a game. She's a threat, and she's going to be a great number 4 when she plays on the other side of the block from Anastasia Boldareva.
Yeah, she's going to be a fantastic addition to the women's basketball team. You know, they've lost a couple players this offseason, graduation to the portal, but she fits what they need at the 4. She has the athleticism. She has the defensive prowess. If you're a Middle Tennessee fan looking forward to next season, yeah, you hate the portal losses. You always hate to see good players go. But if you're a Middle Tennessee Lady Raiders fan, getting her and getting the commitment from Macy Pfeiffer, that's a phenomenal start to your offseason. If I'm Matt Insel, if I'm Rick Insel, if I'm someone on the Lady Raiders staff, I'm probably doing cartwheels a week or two into the offseason going, I'm happy with that. If you would have told me a week ago this is where we'd be, I would have taken that. And so this is a fantastic start. And I got to believe they're going to be looking to the portal for a couple other players who could come in and make an impact next season. I've got some guesses on who it may be. I've got some fingers crossed on a couple that I'm hoping it may make their way to Murfreesboro to make next season just as magical as this season was.
Yeah, I feel a lot of promise there. And if anyone that's following us over at gomiddle.com can see kind of the list that I compiled in one of our forums there about players that were that are on my eye anyway, if I was a recruiting coordinator, which just goes to show that I do know what I'm talking about, because Alina was at the top of my list. She was number 1. So I kind of have an idea of what's going on. But I thought, to credit Matt Insel, I think that she was a target last season. And she kind of slipped through the fingers and went, saw greener grass at a Power 4 conference at Texas Tech, didn't get the playing time that she thought she deserved, and now she's back here. And I think that's all to our benefit. And, as you talk about, I do think that they're going to look to add maybe one more piece to the guard position, maybe 2, but I still think that they're looking for that number 1 point guard. And I know Jada Harrison is one that everyone keeps looking at, and she had a great high school career. The only question mark for her is coming off of that injury. How healthy is she going to be? So that could be something that they're still they're still playing it by ear. But you feel good if you can get someone that's experienced to go in there at the guard position and make it, like as you say, an immediate impact. So I keep saying this: if they can find the right guard, they could move into that top 16 seed that we keep talking about all spring, where we thought the girls got cheated. I think they already are a force to be reckoned with in Conference USA with the way the lineup sits right now without that guard being added. But if they can find a guard that is a true one, a great elite passer like we saw with Savannah Wheeler, you'd love to add some size there, because that's kind of where our downfall was in the tournament. But you can find that true number one guard to kind of complement now your dominant front court. This team could really go places, and now we've got the depth that everyone kept saying would be our downfall. They only play 6 girls. Well, now we've got a whole pin of 7, 8, 9 girls that we can rotate and play 25, 30 minutes a night. And much like last season, anyone could score 20 points a night, and that is a huge factor when it comes to Conference USA play.
Yeah, anytime you have multiple scores, multiple people you can rely on, it's harder for basketball coaches to game plan. Because if you double Savannah Wheeler, well, someone else can step up and score 20. And that is so much harder to defend for basketball coaches, and especially in a sport that you don't have a week, generally speaking, to game plan and to watch film and to kind of think about how are you going to attack. And so having multiple people on the team that are not just great at defense, but also can light the scoreboard up. And so getting that point guard, I think, is going to be key. Finding that person for next season who can come in and kind of quarterback that offense in whatever way that looks. And maybe it's a scorer that's really good at passing, but maybe it's more of a passer who's more of a facilitator. And that's what Matt and Rick are going to have to sort out as they hit the portal and hit the high school ranks for players for next season. Do we want more of a portal, or do we want a high school girl? Do we want a scorer, or do we want a facilitator? Are we okay going at someone who's 5'5", 5'6", or do we want to try to get a little longer to prevent maybe what happened last year? And so they've got some decisions to make as they hit the portal. But after last year, you got to believe that that's an awesome recruiting pitch, because they can say, look, we went toe to toe with Louisville, and Middle Tennessee has beat Louisville, I think 2 years in a row, or 2 years in the past 3 years. They beat Tennessee. This Middle Tennessee Lady Raiders, and not many programs in women's basketball could say they slayed two women basketball giants this year. Middle Tennessee did. And that's going to help with recruiting, to the point where opposing teams know that Middle Tennessee's for real. I mean, think back to the LSU player who leaned over to her coach at the selection show and basically said, Middle Tennessee is going to beat those girls. Middle Tennessee has a reputation. And now it's time for Middle Tennessee to live up to it, to raise the bar, to go to not just one round, but 2 or 3 rounds, make it to the Sweet 16, make it to the Elite Eight. And that's going to require some recruiting. And that's what they're doing right now.
Yeah, and they're doing a great job of it. Yeah, and I'm excited, and a lot of people should be excited. And there's news over on the men's side as well. And as like I said, go to gomiddle.com to check out some of those pages. Oliver Baltz is heading up the men's transfer portal. We had the addition of Alec Oglesby, the Stetson transfer. So big news there. Great shooter, kind of more of a shooting guard type. But then back to the Lady Raiders, you've got, my list that's over there at gomiddle.com as well. And for those that aren't members, it is free to view at a bare minimum. But, of course, subscribe, get in on the conversation and all that good stuff. And, Austin, as we sign out here, give the people a plug of your socials and where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or X or whatever the app is currently being called, at Austin Lewis TN. That's the best way to find me. Follow me. If you got any questions, shoot me a DM. I'd be happy to interact with you, reply to the messages. Just talk Blue Raider ball, or just go to gomiddle.com and sign up. It's free just to sign up. Enjoy the discussion. It's really fun. I've been part of that community, I think, now for about 15 years. And I probably wasted way too much time on gomiddle.com, but it's fun to be a part of that community and just talk ball with the Blue Raider Nation on gomiddle.com.
Right, and this is the time of year to do it. We got all the speculation going on with recruiting, and we got spring ball, as we just talked about today, and then you got like all this transfer portal stuff. So you're missing out if you're not already at gomiddle.com. But Austin, it's been great as always, and hopefully we'll touch base again as we get closer to fall.
Sounds good, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. Welcome into the Blue Raider wrap-up portion of the episode, where I go over a week in review of Blue Raider athletics. First, we will begin with baseball, as they took a trip up to Nashville this last week on Tuesday, and they played the 13th-ranked Vanderbilt Commodores. They dropped that contest by a score of 1-14. Cale Vinson goes 3 for 3 with a run, RBI, a double, and a home run, the lone run of the game. And then I will give a shout-out to Jackson Underwood, who pitched 3 innings, only giving up 2 hits and no runs. Then on the weekend, the Raiders drop 2 of 3 to New Mexico State. On Friday, they lose that contest 12-15. The bullpen gives up the lead in that one. And then on Saturday, they are able to hang on by a score of 10-9 as a part of the Saturday showcase. And then on Sunday, they lose the finale 1-9. Briggs Rudder on Friday night hit for the cycle for the 3rd time in program history, so we continue to see great success from Rudder on all facets of his game, not only catching but especially behind the plate. And a lot to be said about what the plate production was able to do in 2 of those 3 contests against New Mexico State, scoring 12 on Friday and 10 on Saturday, but unfortunately you're only able to pick up 1 win on the weekend. So frustrating. We talked about last week on Baseball Talk with Connor Smith about the bullpen struggling. Vanderbilt was kind of already a far-fetched idea, but you'd love to have at least gotten 2 from New Mexico State, and you had your opportunity on Friday, and the bullpen let you down. And typically on Sunday is when MTSU has great production at the plate, but they weren't able to replicate that this week. So, but we move forward. So this week they got 2 in-state opponents starting tonight against Austin Peay at home. That first pitch is at 6 p.m. and viewable on ESPN+. And then on Wednesday they will face Tennessee Tech also at home, and that first pitch also at 6 p.m. and viewable on ESPN+. And then lastly, they will wrap up the weekend in Huntsville, Texas, as they face Sam Houston State. That first pitch on Friday is at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and then Saturday at 3, and then lastly Sunday at 1. All three of those games will be viewable on ESPN+. Lady Raiders softball, they go 1-3 on the week, beginning with a home win against Lipscomb by a score of 4-3. Shout out to Anzie Blevins, who goes 1 for 2 with a run and 2 RBIs, including a home run in that match. And then they get swept by the Conference USA leader Liberty Flames at home, losing Friday's contest by a score of 1-6. And then on Saturday 1-5, and then Sunday 3-4. They're closest of the matches and drop that one in extra innings. If I had to give my player of the weekend, it would go to Mary Martinez. Despite going 0-1 in 2 appearances on the weekend, she did throw for 12 innings, giving up just 10 hits and 4 earned runs. Will continue their play this week as they face Tennessee State at home on Wednesday. That first pitch is at 6 p.m. and viewable on ESPN+. And then they will go to Bowling Green this weekend to continue their Conference USA season. Friday's first pitch is at 6. Saturday will be at 1 p.m. as well as Sunday also at 1 p.m. All games are in Bowling Green. Men's tennis wrapped up their regular season with 2 home wins, starting on Sunday with a win over Tulane by a score of 5-2. Doubles picked up a 2-1 victory, and then it was Ray Queen, Cam Rowski, Matsuoka, and Kroslak all picking up singles wins for a 5-2 victory over the Wave. And then on Monday, they finished up their regular season finale against UNC Asheville, defeating the Bulldogs 4-0. Doubles picked up their second win of the week, followed behind Ray Queen, Matsuoka, and Cueto Ramos, all getting a sweep in singles for the 4-0 win. Men's tennis will now begin their Conference USA Tournament Championship that's hosted here in Murfreesboro. They are the 1 seed overall, and they will face the 4 seed New Mexico State in the first round of the tournament. And it is only just a 4-team tournament, so you're only looking at 2 matches to move on. And as I said, they will be in Murfreesboro at the Outdoor Tennis Complex, and that first round matchup against New Mexico State is at 10 a.m. on Saturday. So make sure you stop on by and pull your Raiders through as they look to pull off another Conference USA championship this weekend. The Lady Raiders tennis also finished up their regular season going 1-2 on the week. They lost a road contest to Western Kentucky by a score of 1-4. Doubles lost 0-2, and it was Garrett-Connie that had the lone singles win. And then they faced Sam Houston State, winning 4-1 over the Lady Bearcats. Doubles picked up their point, and then Pierre picked up the other singles point, and then you picked up 2 points via forfeit due to Sam Houston not having enough players. So kind of a cheap one, but a win's a win, and it is good that the doubles was able to pick up their points. So can't be too disappointed with that, and it's always good to end on a winning note as you move towards your conference championship. And the ladies, they will travel to Miami for their tournament. A lot more representation from Conference USA with 9 full conference members all participating there in Miami, Florida. The Lady Raiders are the 6th seed, and they will face off against 3 seed Jacksonville State, and they will begin at 1 p.m. Eastern Time this Friday. Next, you've got golf. The men are in the Mozzie Oak Collegiate that is in Mississippi right now. As we stand on recording date on Tuesday morning, they are at 12th. They are at 12th place out of 14 teams. And shout out to Owen Stamper, who's currently at 4 strokes under par, tied for 11th overall. And then Luke Perkins in the 5 spot is at 1 stroke under par and tied for 25th. Then the Lady Raiders, they are taking part of the Conference USA Women's Championship down in Magnolia, Texas this week. They kicked off their round on Monday, and they are currently sitting in 7th out of 7 teams, but there's still plenty of time to make some move up the leaderboard there. Shout out to Lauren Gilchrist, who currently is sitting tied for 13th at 2 strokes over par. Lastly, outdoor track and field, they come back from California at the Brian Clay Invitational. A lot to be spoken for is what happened out there in California, but I'll just name off the top finishers here. You have Heptamu Geta, who goes 8th in the 5K, and on the women's side, you have Odelia Jepchumba, who also finishes on the podium in 5K with a 5th place finish, and then Eleanor Toe, who finishes 1st in the 1,500-meter race. I appreciate everyone tuning in for the Raider wrap-up portion of the episode, and I will also like to congratulate all the Blue Raider fans that were able to come out to blue and white game on Saturday. It certainly was a great showing. I believe the announced attendance was over 2,100. A lot to be thankful for. I know that all the players, as a part of their press conference post-game, made the comment that they were thankful that the fans came out. They were thankful that their family came out, as well as some students that came out. I think the marketing team did a great job of having everyone entertained at all facets, not even just for the football, but for everything that was going on the concourse level, the games that were being played at halftime. I think MTSU did a great job executing the spring game, executing the excitement that we have for football right now, and I hope that we continue to see this execution from the marketing side, see this execution for the people of Murfreesboro, because it's great to build momentum as we move towards the fall. There's a lot to be excited about, and as I said in my talk today with Austin, that there's a lot to look forward to coming this fall. So your continued support, continuing to buy those season tickets is going to go a long way as far as seeing this team succeed, seeing Derek Mason succeed, and all these young players as well. So, again, I appreciate, hats off to the Blue Raider fans that put their money where their mouth was, took the time out of their Saturday to go watch a quick little spring game and see what we got coming for this fall. Well, that'll do it for us. I appreciate everyone listening in this far. Don't forget to follow the show on all of our social medias at Twitter and Instagram at Blue Raider Pod. Of course, if you are listening to this on your favorite streaming service, don't forget that we do have a visual presentation over at YouTube at Blue Raider Podcast, as well as TikTok, Blue Raider Pod for TikTok. And I always forget to plug my own personal stuff, at Jake MP, also at Twitter and X there. If you think about it, give me a shout. And, of course, as me and Austin spoke about in the episode, go to gomiddle.com where you can join in on all the discussions on our forum where we talk all things recruiting, off-season, talk about the transfer portal that's coming up for football. Talk about those pickups that we had from basketball, both men's and women's side. We got you covered, all the bases for MTSU athletics. So if you're a real MTSU sports fan, by all means, sign up for the free membership. Go over there, check out what we're talking about over there, and if you're willing, sign up, get a membership, get in the conversation, join us over there at gomiddle.com. But until next week, I appreciate everyone tuning in, and go Blue.